Hello, and welcome to Greet the Week. I'm Mona Duncan, and I'm here with my co-host, Jan Moray. And Jan chose our topic for today, and she says, can you be too nice? She said, I'm just going to write what she wrote. She said, you've heard of how love and kindness is what is really needed to mitigate all of the harshness and all the things going on in this world. But can you be too nice? Or can someone take your niceness to be placating toward them? In many cases, that works well because it's difficult to stay angry when you're approached with someone that is being nice. But what about whenever you're being nice and the person just is not receptive to it at all? And it just gets worse and worse and worse. So, Jan, what are you thinking about this?
Well, I've been thinking quite a lot about this. Been involved with a few people who kind of got into some tangled relationships because of not wanting to face conflict and just trying to placate the other person, and the other person continues to take advantage of them, and the person still just tries to say, well, it's no big deal, I can handle it, and continues to act like there's no conflict at all. And then eventually one day it blows up in their face, and you can't take it anymore. And I mean, I can speak from experience here many years ago. And I was one of those people thinking that I can deal with it and finally get to the point where I can't. But then you're at the point where you're too far along to really do anything about it. So, what are ways that we can kind of stop this early on, instead of, to change your thinking, instead of thinking, I always have to be nice, I always have to give in, I always have to do the right thing. When is it time to say enough is enough? I feel like you're pushing me too hard, you're being unrealistic. And
well, what do you think?
Well,
when is that point that enough is enough, or when is
well,
that point
it's hard. It's I mean, because a lot of times when they first start doing, I mean, maybe the first few times you're okay with it, but then somewhere along the way, you start to feel a little uneasy or feel like you're being taken advantage of, and but it's difficult to say anything at that point. I think it would be great if you could, when you start to get that feeling, is to say, hey, wait a minute. Why are you always asking me to do this? Or say no. Say no. I don't really want to do this right now. And you can do that with a smile. It doesn't have to be nasty, but for some people, and myself being one of them at the time, I don't have that problem so much anymore. But it is uncomfortable. And as we've talked about before, changing behavior is uncomfortable the first few times you do it. And so it's understanding in your mind that I'm really not feeling right about this, so I need to speak up. I need to say something.
So what about asking permission?
Well, that's you always bring that up, and I always forget that. No, that's a great that's a great technique, is to ask permission. Why don't you elaborate a little bit more on that?
I'm thinking of someone in my own life that I care about very much, but after a while it just gets kind of irritating when their constant response is, don't you think? Mm-hmm. And sometimes I'll say, okay, but 99% of the time, that's not where I'm thinking. That's not where my thoughts are going. Mm-hmm. And so more and more I am learning to that may I be honest with you.
Okay.
Rather than just automatically saying and agreeing with, or may I be honest with you? And I said, honestly, my thoughts do not go where you go. I mean, it's no offense. You're not saying anything wrong as of such, and the fact that I'm not thinking that way is not necessarily right or wrong. It's just that my thoughts aren't like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then too, I have a little bit of I don't know, sometimes it's empathy and sometimes it's just plain down irritation that they don't have enough confidence within themselves to just make a statement without asking someone to agree with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've even said that a few times, you know, can you just make a statement? And I'm okay with it. Sometimes I'll start thinking, no, I didn't notice that previously, but now I'll pay more attention to it
Yeah.
out of respect for you. But to ask them permission.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. No, that's a real good point. One I wish I could remember. Maybe after this episode, I'll remember to do it for the future. But it's so true. People do have differences of opinion, but that doesn't mean, or different values or different ways of looking at things. It doesn't mean one's right and one's wrong. It's just different. And
Right.
there's room in this world for these differences of opinion. And
Yeah. I was thinking, you know, last week we talked a little bit after we closed the recording, and that, you know, we have a tendency to look at perception and look at quality world and look at values and all this kind of stuff. And the thing of it is that we're all in our own way looking at those different things because, you know, we are more trained in that area. But at the same time, we cannot see things in alignment simply because our pictures or our values are a little different than another. So it is, and then, I mean, you know, not only asking the person for permission to speak,
mm-hmm.
as in, you know, can I be honest with you, or um, is it okay if I have a different opinion? Because maybe they're not even aware of that fact, that they're being as dogmatic as it's coming
Yeah.
across.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you ask the question, you're bringing it to their attention that maybe it's not safe for you to have a differing opinion.
Right, right, right.
Yeah.
And then, you know, to ask. And so definitely you want to do it in private.
Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. You don't need people ganging up on the other person.
Right, 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 right. I know one time I was teaching a class at the prison system, and the administrator just come barreling into from my point of view, okay, it was
Right.
it was a rather energetic coming in, came right up to me and right in my face, and she had, you know, something to say to me. And I mean, all of a sudden I was really caught off guard, but I think it was because I was caught off guard that I didn't give thought to it, and that I just simply put my hand up and I said, can we go into the hall?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I don't even know if she was coming to bawl me out or to give me $1,000. Who knows? Give me a
Right.
bonus. But it was such an interruption that I just said, you know, let's go out in the hall. And by the time we walked out in the hall, she had cooled down a little bit.
Yeah.
And you know, it was a why did you this? Uh, but it was
Well,
settled, and it, yeah,
we have to think it's something that's not very pleasant when they barge into a class that you're giving. It had
exactly.
to be something she was upset about.
Yeah. But then, you know, and then if there's someone that starts railing you right in front of others, you say, could we do this in private, or could we go somewhere? We have to have that courage to speak up and to set our own boundaries,
Yeah.
or set boundaries for someone
Right.
else.
Right. But I think about a situation like that, and let's say that's the way she normally ran the business, and you continue to allow her to come into the classroom and interrupt you. And you know, so how do you feel after that? And if that's being done continuously, not only, you know, that you feel like it's inappropriate, but you're thinking, what are the people in the class thinking of you and your abilities when your boss keeps running in like that? And but then you continue not to speak up and say something. You know, how damaging is that to you to just let it continue to happen?
Well, the thing of it is everyone is always watching.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone is always watching, even if they don't think they're watching, even if they're just in the room or just somewhere else. They're still, especially if there's any, that brings the attention to. And so we have to be in contact with ourselves, be aware. Goes back to that awareness. Be aware enough about ourselves to not behave in a way that would devalue who we are or would be against who we're trying to be or who we're growing into be. We're not there yet, but we're working at it. So it's having enough courage, enough stamina to stop and say, well, what other people think is just not that important. It is important, but it's not that important that I need to. I mean, the bottom line is it's more about me than it is about you. The bottom line is it's more about you than it is about me. Is that making any sense at all?
I'm struggling with exactly, if you can elaborate a little bit more on that.
Okay. So someone does something that just really irritates me and I'm set off and I rail into them.
Mm-hmm.
The bottom line is that railing into them is more about me than it is about what they did.
Right.
And so by conversely, when someone is putting me down, how I respond to that is more about me than it is about them.
Yes.
And I know that sounds selfish, but you know what? Whose behavior can we control?
Well, exactly. Yeah.
And so it is being selfish, but in an unselfish way.
Yeah. But a lot of people, once they feel like they're being selfish, they just won't do anything else because I guess they have a tape running in their head that says you can't be selfish. You need to be caring and giving. But if we don't take care of ourselves, who will?
Exactly. And that's when, after the fact, okay, we need to talk to ourselves, see ourselves doing things differently so that we can grow into being what we want to be, or what we know deep down in our wisdom heart that we are. That I am a person of integrity. I have that tendency. I mean, that yin yang is in all of us.
Yeah.
And I have that, there isn't anyone that has never had a murderous thought. And say, oh, I wouldn't do anything like that. Well, you know what? I don't think I would either, but there was way back when that it's within us, is what I'm trying to say. It is within us. And once we know that and realize that, and then, and of course, it's also in that other person.
Right. Yeah.
And that may be what you're afraid of, and you're trying to placate them but it just makes matters worse.
Yeah. I just finished reading the book, Educated. Has anyone?
Oh, yes.
Been that book?
Oh, yes.
By Tara Westover, I think her name is, and it's very, very interesting. It's about a young woman who grew up in Idaho in a Mormon household, and she was the youngest of 7 children, and nobody went to school, and their father ran a junkyard. Their mother was a healer and a midwife, and created essential oils and things, but the family, all worked on the business, and just the way they were treated and the interactions between them, you really realize that we are a violent species.
We are.
And when it's unchecked, I think with civilization, it's checked. That we know that it's not good to act that way and to do that, and that's definitely an example of the mother being too nice, who didn't stand up to the father. and the daughter, the author, finally, stands up to them and starts living a different life from them. But it's tough. It's difficult. You get a lot of pushback, and it's a difficult place to be. But you have to look out for yourself. You have to do what's right for you, and but understand that it may not be met with acceptance, and people may not agree with what you're doing, and so it's that I mean, I just finished the book Saturday, and
Yeah,
so
it's a great book.
it's very appropriate for the topic that I picked for today, which I picked over a month ago. So. So to understand, that there are people who will be very angry and very upset at you and can do some pretty terrible things to you, but it's not selfish for you to stand up for yourself. And of course, she never asked for permission either to say something. She just just said it. But it's a big lesson for us to learn, because those kinds of things can get us into situations that are pretty messy, and it's very difficult to get out of.
Yeah.
When are you going to open this up to? I have a lot to say about this subject. So
well, we have another 10 minutes to go, Alice, and then we'll open it up. Okay.
All
right. I can see you ready to go. I'm ready to discuss it with you, so that's good.
Well, the thing of it is not waiting too long.
Right.
It's not waiting too long, because the longer you wait, the more difficult it becomes. And once then you do have the courage and the strength to do it, forgive yourself, even if there's this guilt that comes back to you.
Right.
Forgive yourself, because if you don't take care of you, no one else will.
Right.
Or sometimes if they want to try to take care of you in ways that are not in keeping with your personality.
Well, there are those feelings of guilt. I mean, you're speaking up against your family, the people you loved and who raised you, and you're beginning to think, I don't believe the way you believe anymore. And to be able to say what you believe and not be criticized or insulted.
The thing of it, there is true guilt and false guilt.
Yeah.
A true guilt is when I have harmed someone else, whether that is through slander, whether that is through physical harm, whether that is through neglect, whatever it is. I have lied to, I have somehow harmed someone else. If I feel guilty about that, thank goodness the conscience is still alive.
Yeah.
There's something in there that's trying to tell you,
tell you something.
To tell you that you are not behaving in a way. And sometimes even you're mad at yourself because you was nice to someone when you should have been a little bit more
more kind.
Boundary setting. But then there's that true guilt when you really have. But then there's that false guilt simply because you think you have not done what has been pleasing to someone else. And that right there goes back to the fact that selfishness, I mean, we are selfish, but it needs to be a self-care, not a selfish, because it is more about you than it is about them in the long run.
Mm-hmm. And you have to protect yourself. You have to be who you are. And I mean, I could really relate with the author, is that, your family can try to push you into being who they want you to be, and you're not that. And it's difficult to say that's not who I am. I am.
Be who you are without being ugly, hateful in your face to the person that's
correct.
And sometimes, if they are so overpowering, there does have to be a little force there. As in speaking up, as in, actually saying something, as in walking out, but I've said this before and I so believe it. I told the prisoners all the time, all bullies are the same. Meaning they can give it, but they cannot take it. And when someone that is being abused, finally has the And it does take courage, or to stand up, or to get someone else to come in with you, you know. And I'm not saying that you have to do it on your own, because that's where
It
we
can be
get in a lot of
dangerous.
trouble, is trying to do too much on our own.
And
We
it can be
need to get
dangerous
help.
too to
Yes,
confront
yes,
the
yes,
person
yes.
by yourself. And it's better to have somebody there with you
Right.
to
And
help you
they
out.
may never see it. And that's on them. It's not on you. And you have to give yourself that peace. You have to take it. You have to allow a higher being to, you know, a higher power. You have to allow someone else to give you enough faith that you can take it and begin to walk in it just a little bit, breathe it a little bit, and have a little bit more peace, that you can begin to receive it and to take it in and to nurture it and to let it grow.
Yeah.
Because once it's, so here we are. Yeah, we'll do it this, because here we are. So we're going through life together, you know. It's good. Whether it's workers or mates or whatever, okay? I mean, this is just really good. It's just a good friendship. And all of a sudden one starts pulling away. You know, here, yeah, that's it. So here together, and one starts pulling away for whatever reason. You know, maybe it's dissing you, maybe it's, well, anyway, they start pulling away, and the other person who's thought everything's been kind of okay goes, uh-oh, and so they begin to notice they're pulling away, and you know what? They start trying to pull back.
Pull you back. Yeah.
Pull you back, and the way you try to pull back is to be super nice. Well, if I do what you want me to do, surely you won't leave me. Surely you'll be nice to me. Surely you'll whatever. But what happens is then then they begin, you know, working on you, because I'm doing what I want to do. And so what it is whenever you get in that tangled situation, you have to right yourself and go about your own business. You have to learn who you are. You have and let them self-destructive. I think everybody in the world ought to go to Al-Anon's, because we're all addicted somehow, some way, and we live with it. It's either we're the addiction or the, you know, and we begin to see how that I have contributed to a problem.
Well, you
But
have
that's not to
contributed.
place blame on you. It's
Right.
not to place blame.
Right.
It's to get honest.
It's to understand what's going on, to understand that you do have a part in it, that you
Right.
have enabled that person to act the way they do and get away with it.
Right. Right. And it's almost like giving them permission to, although you weren't giving them permission to. It was, well, the movie that was just previewed, and it was on, you know, YouTube, of course, but anyway, it was Infinite Possibilities. Who was John Bohm, B-O-H-M. Are you familiar with him? Did anybody watch that? It was just last week. And anyway, they premiered it. David Bohm was Einstein's cohort for years. And Einstein, of course, was talking about relativity. But David Bohm began to see things that Einstein wasn't seeing. Einstein was looking at how everything is relative. This relates to that, that relates to that, that relates to that. And in looking at all of the stuff that Einstein was looking at, David Bohm began to see that, well, they do relate to each other, but they kind of, he called it fold and enfold. That as they relate, they begin to take on personality of the other, you know, of the other, whatever. And then they begin to kind of mesh. But as you begin to fold, and then as you begin to enfold, they can be, each element can be true to itself. And Einstein didn't agree with him. And after a while, it was during the McCarthy years, and Bohm was a physicist, and they were all working on the Manhattan Project and all this kind of stuff. And anyway, he was taken before Congress, David Bohm was, with his ideas of enfoldment and, you know, unenfoldment and all this kind of stuff. And anyway, he was kicked out. He went in exile. literally went in
She was
exile.
ridiculed, or
Yes. Going back to who we talked about the other day,
yeah,
the sun's not the middle. I mean, the sun is the middle of the earth. Not
right,
anyway.
right.
Yes. And now people are looking at what all his thoughts were, and seeing the fact that, you know what, there was a lot, because there is, even in all this quantum space, there is no space. Everything has something in it. And it says we fold and enfold that it becomes seeable.
I guess
And I know that sounds,
yeah, it's an
yeah,
interesting concept. It's something we need to think about. But it's so interesting how violently people respond to things that just go against what they believe. And it's not that it's anything that's going to hurt you, but it's just because
that's
it's
it. This David Bohm in 1952 wrote an essay, and he sent it to a lot of his original detractors. And anyway, this one guy read it, and he told all the other people, he said, if there's no disagreement, if you don't have any disagreement in all this thing that he read, then we'll just ignore him. Now, if we disagree, we'll get back in there and we'll start fighting.
Oh.
And none of them disagreed.
Wow.
None of them disagreed. But they literally ignored him. And he died never having brought it to the forefront.
So are other people bringing up his ideas and re-looking at them?
Right.
Well, you can be before your time, and when you're before your time, it's just unfortunate that
it is exactly, and that is everything. There's even a scripture book that says, "In the fullness of time," and when the time is ripe, the seed will grow.
Yeah.
And when the time, but there's been so many people that have seen that little glimpse, that little flicker, that little something there. I don't know what it is, but I sit there. I have this book I picked up at Barnes and Noble the other day, and it's called Find a Cat. And it is all kinds of scenery and houses. I mean, just all kinds of things. And everywhere in there's a legitimate cat that has been, but it's camouflaged in such a way. And once you see it, and then even once you see it, and you kind of look for it again, it's where'd it go? I know. Yeah. I know I saw it.
I know. I saw it there somewhere. Interesting.
Yeah, but just know that when we're being too nice, and we know when we're being too nice. And so get a little iron in that backbone and right yourself in more ways than one. And learn to use your words. Ask permission. Calm yourself down. Set a time so that you can talk whenever neither are overly angry.
Right. You have to pick the right time.
Even if it's a whole group, do something fun together first, and then let's get down to business here.
Right. But don't keep it to yourself. Let's get that word out there.
So I don't have my clock here, are we?
Yeah, well, we're out of time. So thanks everybody for joining. And again, next week we will not have an episode. So we'll be back live in 2 weeks. That'll be the 17th. So we'll see you then. And those of you here, let's hang on and find out what Alice has to say.